Zariah Cole's hand trembled as she signed the final page of the contract that had ruled her life for the past year. The courtroom was too bright, too silent, and too cold, much like the man seated across from her. Lee Junjie, the billionaire CEO whose signature could buy cities, sat motionless. His dark suit was perfectly pressed, his expression unreadable, his presence suffocating. This was it. 1 year of marriage. Over. Zariah forced herself to look up, to meet those sharp obsidian eyes one last time. "It's done," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Junjie didn't respond. His jaw tightened, but his gaze didn't waver. There was something in his eyes, something unreadable, dangerous, almost wounded. But she didn't dare look too closely. Not when her heart was already in pieces. The clerk cleared her throat. "Mrs. Lee, you'll need to sign here as well." Mrs. Lee. It still hurt to hear that name. Her fingers brushed the pen again, but the room suddenly tilted. Her breath hitched as the walls began to blur, the sound of her heartbeat drowning out every voice in the courtroom. Zariah blinked, trying to steady herself. The papers. The pen. The eyes watching her. Junjie's eyes. Dark, piercing, and suddenly filled with alarm. "Zariah?" His voice cut through the noise, low and sharp. "Zariah." The world went black. The next time she opened her eyes, everything smelled like antiseptic and linen. White walls. Soft beeping. Her body ached, but it was the weight in her chest that hurt most. "Take it easy, Mrs. Lee," a nurse said gently. "You're at Hangzhou Central Hospital." Zariah blinked in confusion. "Hospital? What happened?" "You fainted in court," the nurse replied with a small smile. "Your husband brought you in himself." Her husband. The word made her heart skip. "He's here?" Before the nurse could answer, the door slid open. Lee Junjie stepped inside, his tailored suit unwrinkled, his expression calm. But his eyes, they told another story. For the first time, Zariah saw something raw flicker there. "Zariah," he said quietly, approaching her bedside. "The doctor will explain everything."
Her throat went dry.
Everything. The doctor entered with a file in hand and an uncertain look. "Mrs. Lee, we ran some tests after you fainted." He paused. "Congratulations. You're pregnant." The words fell heavy in the air. Zariah blinked once. Then twice. Her breath caught. "That's impossible," she whispered. I'm still a virgin." Silence. Junjie's eyes didn't waver. He took a slow step forward. "You're carrying my child," he said firmly, his tone like steel wrapped in silk. Zariah's heart pounded in her ears. "How can you say that? We never." "I don't need proof," he cut in. "I know what's mine." The nurse and doctor exchanged startled glances as tension filled the room. Zariah stared at him, searching his face for a hint of logic, of reason, but all she saw was determination, possession, and something deeper, something that scared her more than the impossible truth in front of her. Because for the first time in a year, Lee Junjie didn't look like the cold CEO she had married. He looked like a man who wasn't going to let her go. The air in the hospital room was thick enough to choke on. Zariah couldn't move, couldn't think. The word pregnant spun around her head like a cruel joke. Every rational thought screamed that it was impossible. She'd signed a contract with clear rules, no intimacy, no attachment, no expectations. And now here she was. "You're lying," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The doctor adjusted his glasses nervously. "The tests were done twice, Mrs. Lee. The results are consistent. You're about 5 weeks along." 5 weeks. Zariah's breath stuttered. She tried to sit up, but Junjie's hand pressed gently against her shoulder, firm but careful. "Don't move too fast," he said. His tone was low, almost tender, but his expression was all steel. She jerked away. "Don't touch me. This can't be happening." He said nothing. His gaze lingered on her face for a long moment before turning to the doctor. "I want a private room. Full security. No one enters without my permission." "Of course, Mr. Lee," the doctor replied, clearly relieved to have someone taking control. Zariah stared at him, fury cutting through her confusion. "What are you doing?" Protecting what's mine, he said simply. The words slammed into her. Yours? Junja, this isn't, you know we never. Enough. His voice dropped, quiet but commanding, the kind of tone that ended boardroom arguments before they began. You fainted under my name, woke up under my name, and now you carry my child. That's all anyone needs to know. She blinked, her heart racing. You think this is about reputation? He met her gaze, unflinching. Everything is about reputation. Zoraya's chest burned with anger and disbelief. You can't just claim something that doesn't make sense. I already have. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door, his voice softening just slightly. Get some rest, Zoraya. I'll handle everything else. The door closed behind him, leaving her staring at the sterile white ceiling, her pulse thundering in her ears. Hours passed. Nurses came and went. She couldn't tell if it was day or night anymore. When she finally managed to sleep, her dreams were strange. Flashes of light, warmth, the faint memory of someone holding her hand during one of her fevers weeks ago. She remembered murmured words, a cool touch brushing her forehead. She had assumed it was the maid or a nurse. But what if it wasn't? Zoraya woke with a start, sweat beading her forehead. She found Junjia seated in the corner, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, scrolling through his phone. He looked exhausted, though he'd never admit it. You're still here? She asked quietly. He looked up. You think I'd leave you alone after what happened? Her heart fluttered, but she masked it with irritation. Don't act like you care. You couldn't wait to end our marriage this morning.
His jaw tightened.
That was before I found out you were carrying my child. Stop saying that, she snapped. We never. He stood abruptly, crossing the room in 3 long strides. The tension between them crackled like fire.
Zoraya.
His voice was low, almost dangerous. Do you really think I'd let another man touch you while you were still my wife? She froze. What are you implying? He leaned closer, eyes glinting under the hospital lights. I'm implying that you're mine, whether the contract says so or not. Her breath caught. For a moment, neither of them moved. His cologne, dark wood and something sharper, wrapped around her like a memory she shouldn't have. Then, just as suddenly, he stepped back, the mask sliding over his features again. I've arranged for you to stay at my penthouse until we sort this out. I'm not going anywhere with you, she said, clutching the sheets. You are, he replied calmly, because it's the safest place for you now, and for our child. The way he said our child made her stomach twist. He walked toward the door, pausing only once. Rest, Zoraya. I'll send a car in the morning. When he was gone, Zoraya pressed her palms to her face, shaking. This wasn't love. This was madness. And yet, beneath the confusion, beneath the fear, was something worse, the smallest, most dangerous part of her heart whispering that maybe she didn't want him to walk away. Zoraya didn't sleep that night. Even with the hospital room dimmed and quiet, her mind wouldn't rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Junjia's face. The hard lines, the calm mask, the flicker of something dangerous when he said our child. The words haunted her. By morning, a sleek black car waited outside the hospital, guarded by men in suits. Junjia's men. I don't want any of this, she murmured as a nurse helped her into her clothes. But when she stepped outside, the chill wind hit her face, and she realized she didn't have a choice. The media had already gotten wind of her fainting in court. Cameras flashed across the street, voices shouting, Mr. Lee, is it true your wife is pregnant? Junjia stood beside the car, composed as ever, his presence commanding enough to silence even the press. When his eyes met hers, something in his expression softened. Get in, he said quietly. Zoraya wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the chaos behind them made resistance impossible. She slid into the car. Inside, the silence was thick. You called the press? She asked finally, her voice sharp. He didn't look at her.
No. Someone leaked it.
Probably from the courthouse. But don't worry, I'll take care of it. She folded her arms. That's what you said about everything else. His eyes flicked toward her, briefly. And I did, didn't I? Zariah turned to the window, ignoring the shiver that ran through her. The Lee penthouse towered over the city, a fortress of glass and shadow. As the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a world that smelled faintly of cedar and money. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline glittering like 1,000 eyes watching her. She hadn't been here in months. Not since their last argument about boundaries, trust, and everything they both refused to say out loud. Your room's been prepared, Junjia said. Down the hall, last door on the left. Separate rooms, she said flatly. Of course. He removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and poured a glass of water, moving with the quiet grace of a man who'd spent his entire life in control. But she saw it, the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers tightened slightly around the glass. Zariah took a deep breath. Why are you doing this, Junjia? He looked up, expression unreadable. Doing what? Pretending this makes sense. You know I'm not pregnant with your child. You know it's impossible. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. And yet, it's happening. You're not even shocked, she said, frustration breaking through her fear. Any normal person would be losing their mind right now. Because I already knew, he said quietly. Zariah froze. What? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he set down the glass, his reflection merging with hers in the window. You were sick 3 weeks ago. You had a fever so high I thought you'd stop breathing. You don't remember it, do you? Her pulse quickened.
No.
I just remember sleeping for days. His jaw tightened. You kept whispering my name. She stared at him, heat rushing to her cheeks. That doesn't mean anything. He moved closer, too close. It means more than you think. Her heart raced. Are you saying something happened? He didn't answer, only reached into his pocket and pulled out a small pendant she hadn't seen in months, a silver locket she'd lost the night she fell ill. I found this in your hand, he said. You were holding it so tightly it cut your palm. Her mind spun. So, what are you saying, Junjia? That we. He stepped back, expression clouded. I'm saying there are things neither of us remembers clearly. But I'll find out the truth. Zariah's chest ached with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. And if the truth proves this child isn't yours? He looked at her then, really looked, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I'll still claim it. Because you're mine, Zariah. You always were. The words left her breathless. She should have been furious. She should have screamed. But instead, she felt something else, something she hadn't felt in months.
Warmth. Safety.
The same feeling she'd felt that night when fever blurred her mind and a cool hand brushed her cheek. Dinner will be at 7, he said, his tone snapping back to calm authority. You need to eat for the baby. For the baby, she echoed numbly. When he left the room, Zariah collapsed onto the bed, her hands trembling. Nothing made sense anymore. Not the pregnancy. Not Junjia's strange certainty. Not the way her heart still responded to the man she was supposed to be free from. She touched her stomach, the smallest spark of disbelief mingling with fear. Could it really be possible? And if it was, what else had happened that night? She couldn't remember. By the time Zariah finally left her room, the sky had darkened over Hangzhou. The city lights glittered through the glass walls, bathing the penthouse in gold and shadow. She hesitated at the top of the stairs. The scent of food drifted through the air, something rich, foreign, and expensive, like everything about Li Junjia's world. Her world once. He was waiting for her at the long dining table, sleeves rolled up, a single place setting across from his. The man didn't just sit. He commanded the space. Even in silence. Zariah's stomach twisted. You didn't have to cook. I didn't, he said, pouring her a glass of water. But I wanted to make sure you ate. The way he said you, soft, deliberate, made something inside her tremble. She sat down carefully, eyes fixed on her plate instead of the man across from her. You're acting like we're married again. He leaned back, eyes unreadable. We are, technically. The contract's expiration was never filed. Her head shot up. What? The documents you were supposed to sign before you fainted are still incomplete, he said calmly. Which means legally, you're still my wife. Zariah's fork clattered onto the table. You're joking. I never joke about contracts. For a long moment, she just stared at him, disbelief curdling into frustration. You planned this, didn't you? You wanted me to faint before signing. He gave a small, humorless smile. You think I have that kind of power over your body? The words hung between them, mocking, intimate. Zariah pushed her chair back slightly, needing distance. You're manipulating me, Junjia. I'm protecting you, he countered, his tone suddenly sharp. Do you have any idea what would happen if the media found out the divorced wife of Lee Junjia is carrying his child? I don't care what they think, she snapped. Well, I do. His voice was low now, dangerous. Because they don't just come for me. They'll come for you. Zariah's anger faltered. Beneath his coldness, there was something else.
Fear.
You're hiding something, she said softly. He met her gaze. I'm hiding 100 things, Zariah. None of which concern you anymore. The words hurt more than she wanted them to. Fine, she whispered. Then I'll leave tomorrow. He stood abruptly. No, you won't. Watch me. He took a slow step toward her. You're not leaving until I know you're safe. And until we know what's happening with the baby. We, she echoed, incredulous. There is no we, Junjia. You made that clear a long time ago. Something flickered across his face, regret, maybe. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Eat, he said finally, voice softer now.
Please.
The single word, please, broke something inside her. It wasn't a command, it was almost human. Almost vulnerable. She picked up her fork again, her hand trembling slightly. The silence that followed was fragile, filled with unspoken memories. The late nights they'd once shared in this same penthouse, when she'd laugh over his burned noodles and he'd pretend not to smile. Now, they were strangers sitting at the same table, pretending not to feel the ghost of what could have been. Halfway through dinner, Junjia's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, and his jaw clenched. Who is it? She asked, catching the change in his eyes. No one, he said, standing. Eat your food. But she saw the name flash before he locked the phone, Lian. Zariah's heart went cold. Your ex? He didn't answer. Unbelievable, she whispered, standing too. You're here playing protector while still talking to her? It's business. Of course it is, she said bitterly. Everything's business with you. He turned toward her, eyes darkening. You think I'm the only one pretending here? The question hit harder than she expected. What's that supposed to mean? It means, he said, taking a step closer. You keep saying you hate me, but you're still here. Her breath caught. They were inches apart now. The tension between them hummed like electricity, unspoken, dangerous. I'm here, she said quietly, because you forced me to be. Really? His gaze dropped to her lips. That's the only reason? Zariah's pulse fluttered.
Don't do this.
He leaned in, his voice a whisper against her skin. Tell me to stop. She should have. She should have screamed, pushed him away, reminded herself that this man had broken her heart long before she even understood it. But instead, her silence answered for her. He stopped just short of kissing her, his breath warm against her cheek. You're shaking, he murmured. You're too close, she breathed. Maybe, he said, pulling back slowly, eyes lingering. But for the first time in a long time, you're not running. And with that, he walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the golden-lit dining room, heart racing, breath unsteady, and mind reeling with questions she no longer knew how to ask. Zariah stood by the window, her reflection swallowed by the city lights. The mansion was the same as she'd left it, too big, too cold, too full of memories that weren't hers. Only this time, it wasn't a contract that bound her here. It was the secret pulsing inside her, the child she hadn't planned, and the husband she could no longer read. Lee Junjia's footsteps echoed behind her. Slow, controlled, too calm for someone whose world was burning. You haven't eaten, he said quietly, stopping a few feet away. I'm not hungry, she replied, not turning around. You don't have to pretend to care. His silence stretched between them. Pretend, he repeated, voice sharp as glass. You think I'm pretending now? Soraya laughed bitterly. You did it for a year, didn't you? Pretending to be my husband for a contract. You're good at it. He stepped closer, until his breath brushed her neck. That was business, he murmured. This is not. She turned, meeting his gaze. Then what is this, Junja? Because I'm tired of not knowing. You claim a baby that shouldn't exist to move me back in here, and look at me like I'm the one keeping secrets. His jaw tightened, but his eyes softened for a fleeting second, long enough to hurt. You are, he said. You just don't know it yet. What's that supposed to mean? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. One glance, and his expression changed. He walked out without a word, leaving her standing there with 1,000 questions clawing at her chest. She followed him hours later, barefoot, drawn by instinct, down the marble stairs, past the guards who bowed and pretended not to notice her. The door to his study was ajar. Voices murmured inside. She doesn't remember, Junjie said in Mandarin, his tone low but tense. Another man replied, You think it's safe to tell her?
Not yet.
If she finds out what really happened that night, she'll never forgive me. Soraya's heart pounded. That night? What was he hiding? She backed away, almost tripping over the hem of her silk robe. His voice echoed after her. She's better off thinking it was a miracle. When he found her again, she was sitting in the garden, pretending not to have heard a thing. He knelt beside her, brushed a curl from her cheek, and whispered, Don't look at me like that, Soraya. I'm trying to protect you. From what? She asked softly. He didn't answer. He just looked at her, like a man carrying the weight of a lie too heavy to speak. And for the first time, she realized something. Maybe she wasn't the only one trapped in a contract she didn't understand. Soraya never expected the truth to come in whispers. It was midnight when she followed him again, this time not out of curiosity, but instinct. Junjie had been distant all evening, his phone locked, his eyes unreadable. The storm outside seemed to echo the storm in her chest. She found him in the private wing of the mansion, standing by the glass wall that overlooked the rain-soaked courtyard. His back was to her, but he knew she was there. He always did. Why won't you just tell me the truth? She asked, her voice shaking. What happened that night, Junjie? Why can't I remember? He turned slowly. His expression wasn't cold, just broken. Because you weren't supposed to, he said softly. You were never meant to find out. She took a step closer. Find out what? Before he could answer, the door slammed open. A woman stood there, tall and elegant in a crimson coat, her lipstick matching the fury in her eyes. It was Lien, his ex-fiancée. Oh, so she doesn't know, Lien said with a low laugh, striding in. How poetic. The little contract wife, clueless as ever. Junjie's jaw tightened. Leave, Lien.
Now.
Or what? She sneered. You'll lie to her again? Tell her how you saved her life that night, by making her yours? Soraya froze. What does she mean by that? Junjie looked at her helplessly, but Lien stepped closer, savoring every word like venom. You fainted that night after you wrote your college final papers. I told the staff to call him, told them you'd been drugged. But what I didn't mention was that I did it. Soraya's breath hitched. You what? Lien smiled coldly. It was supposed to be harmless. Just a little reminder not to play in our world. But then your body went into shock. The doctor said you might not wake up, and she glanced at Junjie, refused to leave your side. He begged them to save you. Soraya turned to him, tears burning her eyes. Junjie? He looked pale, haunted. The medication they used to stabilize you, there was a complication, he said hoarsely. You stopped breathing, and your heart, it was failing. Her voice cracked. So, what did you do? I gave you a blood transfusion, he said. But there was more. The compound they used, it carried my DNA. It was experimental, meant for emergency regenerative therapy. I didn't know it would, his voice broke. It wasn't supposed to cause a pregnancy. Lien laughed cruelly. You hear that? You're carrying his child because he bled for you. How romantic. Soraya stumbled back, gripping the table for support. That's impossible. I wanted to tell you, Junjie said, stepping forward. But you were already so scared, and the doctors told you to keep quiet. Lien finished for him, eyes glinting. Because if the world finds out, your company goes down in flames. Enough, he barked, his voice cracking the air. You've done enough damage. But Lien wasn't done. She reached into her coat and pulled out a file, medical reports, photographs, the kind that could destroy lives. You think you can erase me, Junjie? I made you. And if I go down, I'm taking your little miracle wife with me. He moved fast, ripping the file from her hands, but not before Zariah saw her own photo among the pages. Hospital bed, for lines, a scar she hadn't known existed. Get out, Junjie said, low and dangerous. Before I forget who you used to be. Lien's smile vanished. She glanced once at Zariah and hissed, You'll wish you never woke up that night. When the door slammed shut behind her, silence fell. Heavy, unbearable. Zariah sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. So this is the truth, she whispered. I'm pregnant because of an accident. Because of science. Junjie knelt before her. No, he said firmly. You're pregnant because you lived. Because I couldn't let you die. Her tears spilled freely now. You should have told me. I know, he whispered, reaching for her hand. But I was afraid you'd see it as a curse. When all I saw was a miracle. Outside, thunder rolled again. But this time, it sounded softer, almost like the storm was finally beginning to fade. The house was quiet after the storm, but it wasn't empty anymore. Not with him standing there, watching her with eyes that finally looked alive. Zariah leaned against the balcony rail, the dawn spilling gold across her skin. The city below was waking up, but inside, everything felt still, as if the world itself was holding its breath. You should hate me, Junjie said softly, his voice rough. After everything. After what my silence did to you. She turned, eyes wet but steady. I tried, she whispered. But the truth is, I never stopped wanting to understand you. He took a step closer, then another. The man who had once built walls around every emotion now stood bare before her. Zariah, he said, voice breaking. I didn't know what love was until you signed that contract. I didn't know what faith was until I almost lost you. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and she smiled, trembling but real. And I didn't know what strength was until you gave me a reason to fight for something again. His hand reached for hers. Then fight with me. No more secrets. No more pretending. I'm done pretending, she said, resting her forehead against his. If this is madness, then I want it, all of it. And when his lips found hers, it wasn't desperate like before. It was quiet, reverent, like the final piece of something that had been waiting to fit. For the first time, there were no contracts, no rules, just them. But peace never lasts long in their world. The next morning, the mansion gates were surrounded, flashing cameras, reporters shouting her name, news anchors waving printed headlines. The CEO's virgin wife pregnant, a scientific miracle or a corporate cover-up? Zariah froze as the television played the leaked footage, her hospital photo, the documents Lien had threatened to expose. Junjie's company logo filled the screen, and chaos erupted outside their gates. It's her, Junjie said grimly, pacing the floor. Lien leaked everything. Before he could call security, the power flickered. Then the door burst open. Men in black masks. A van outside. Screams. They went straight for Zariah. Get her out, Junjie roared, lunging at one of them. The sound of breaking glass filled the room. She fought, kicking, screaming, but someone pressed a cloth to her mouth, and darkness swallowed her whole. She woke to the smell of damp concrete. Her wrists were tied. Her head pounded. And across from her, Lien. You really are lucky, Lien said, crouching down, her perfect hair disheveled. You took everything from me, his love, his loyalty, his future. So now I'll take yours. Zariah's heart pounded. You think this will bring him back to you? Lien's eyes glistened with rage. It will destroy him. That's close enough. Before she could speak again, the door slammed open. Junjie stood there, soaked from the rain, blood on his knuckles, fury in his eyes. He didn't speak, he just moved. 2 guards went down in seconds. Lien shrieked as he pulled Zariah to her feet and into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice shaking. "No," she whispered, clutching his shirt. "But you—" "I'm fine," he said, holding her tighter. "You're all that matters." Police sirens wailed outside. Lien was dragged away, screaming curses that echoed down the hall. But all Zariah heard was the sound of his heartbeat, steady beneath her ear. 2 days later, they faced the world together. At the press conference, the lights were blinding. Microphones filled the stage. Reporters demanded answers. Junjie stood tall beside her, fingers laced through hers. "There's been speculation," he said calmly. "But this woman," his gaze softened, "is not a scandal. She is my wife. She is my miracle. And what happened was not an experiment, but an accident that gave us a reason to live again." Zariah took the microphone next. "People will believe what they want. But love doesn't need permission. We didn't plan this child. We didn't even plan each other. But sometimes, the most impossible stories are the truest." The cameras clicked. The world watched. And for once, they didn't hide. That night, in the quiet of their room, Zariah rested her head on his chest. The baby's heartbeat fluttered faintly in her belly, matching his. "Do you think it'll ever be normal again?" she murmured. He smiled softly. "No," he said. "But I don't want normal. I want us." Outside, the world still buzzed. Headlines, gossip, whispers. But inside, in the dim warmth of their home, there was only peace. Love, unplanned, unexplainable, unstoppable. The kind that could turn a contract into a promise, a mistake into a miracle, and 2 broken hearts into forever. Epilogue, 1 year later. Spring sunlight streamed through the glass walls of the penthouse nursery, scattering soft gold across pastel walls. The city outside buzzed faintly, but here, everything was quiet, peaceful, sacred. Zariah stood by the crib, rocking gently as tiny fingers curled around hers. The baby's eyes, deep, dark, and full of mischief, blinked up at her, and she laughed softly. "Your father is late again," she whispered, probably arguing with the board about why he can't miss bedtime. The door opened behind her. "Correction," Junjie's voice said, low and teasing. "Your father was only pretending to be late, to see if his wife missed him." Zariah turned, rolling her eyes but smiling all the same. He stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, a bouquet of white peonies in one hand and exhaustion in his eyes. But when he saw her, everything softened. "You're terrible at pretending," she said. He set the flowers down and crossed the room, slipping an arm around her waist. "You used to say that," he murmured against her temple, "but I'm getting better at showing what I really feel." Their daughter cooed between them, and Junjie leaned in to kiss her tiny forehead. "You know," he said softly, "for someone who is never supposed to exist, she's got my entire world wrapped around her little finger." Zariah smiled, watching the way he looked at their child. Not like a CEO, not like a man carrying the weight of an empire, but like a father completely undone by love. "She's proof," Zariah whispered. "Of what?" "That miracles don't need explanations." He turned to her then, brushing his fingers along her jaw. "Neither does love." Outside, the skyline shimmered, a blend of light and shadow, like everything they'd survived. Reporters had moved on to new scandals, investors had forgiven, and the whispers had faded into legend. Now their story wasn't a headline. It was just life. Messy, precious,
Real.
Zariah handed him the baby, watching as he held her with practiced ease. "She has your eyes," he said. "And your stubbornness," Zariah replied, laughing. "God help us all." He looked up at her, that rare smile tugging at his lips. "I love you, Zariah," he said simply. She leaned in, kissing him softly. "I love you too. No contracts this time." "No contracts," he agreed. "Just forever." That night, when the lights dimmed and their daughter finally slept, Zariah lay in bed, her fingers entwined with his. The The city hummed outside, alive, untamed, full of stories. But hers was complete. Born from accident, healed by truth, sustained by love. And as Junjia's hand rested protectively over hers, she thought, maybe the impossible had always been God's favorite kind of story.